Hi, welcome to this video for the context for Kamikaze by Beatrice Garland. All images used in the PowerPoint are of the public domain. Okay, today we'll be looking at the poet Beatrice Garland, we'll be looking at World War II, and we'll also be looking at kamikaze pilots. Now, Beatrice Garland is a poet who writes a lot of strong emotive poetry. She uses the structure of someone telling a story to make her poetry seem realistic and relatable. This can be seen in Kamikaze. Beatrice Garland herself has actually expressed her interest in listening to stories told by other people. She adapts this into her writing style by allowing her readers to share the same experience as her. She uses her poetry to express her own concerns. In Kamikaze, we can assume that the message isn't just a lesson in history, it's a reminder that this is still relevant to today's world. This tactic is not something that happened just in the past. People still commit the act of killing themselves for an ideal today. The poem has strong links to the idea of family. We see generations mentioned within the poem, and the idea of the bond of family is present throughout, especially when the third-person narrator switches to first person to show she can no longer deny her bond to her disgraced father. Now, Japan were involved in World War II as being allied with Germany and Italy. They mainly had their sights set on America and often performed attacks and raids on American soil. In this war, where the Allies are one of the Axis forces, a common habit of people whose plane had been damaged and the pilot could not escape was to attempt to crash the aircraft into an enemy target. This was an idea before kamikaze pilots even became a unit, so we can actually see that this is where the inspiration for the unit came from. This was an admired and a feared act, the reason being that of the fact that pilots who chose to do this showed determination and desire to make their last act for their country as one of a fighter. Some considered this patriotic, others saw this as proof that people of this mindset could be dangerous and didn't hesitate in what they did. On the 7th of December 1941, during a raid on Pearl Harbor, First Lieutenant Vasata Ida's plane suffered damages. Instead of aborting the mission, he crashed his plane into an enemy target. Reportedly, he told his men before takeoff that this would be his plan should he actually suffer damages to his aircraft. Following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, America decided that they would move their forces in attacks against Japan. This put a lot of pressure on the Japanese military, and a desperate new strategy had to be formed. This desperate new strategy was the kamikaze pilots. A kamikaze pilot is a pilot who crashes their plane into a target, killing themselves and hopefully the enemy. The army had older and much more experienced pilots train young pilots to fly a plane on a one-way journey. Young pilots were brainwashed by doctrine into believing that this course of action was honourable and participating in this act would bring great honour to them. They were literally told that dying and killing themselves for their country was the honourable thing to do. When asked for volunteers, the army found that they actually had too many people wanting to lay their lives down for the country. Some people had to be turned away. Those who turned away from their duty at the last minute were shunned by the army and their families when they returned home. So it wasn't a thing you could back out of. To this day, kamikaze pilots are still honoured in Japan, not as an example of how you should act, but as a lesson in the desperate acts that people will go through to protect their country. Okay, now that you know this, try to revise these 3 points. For every quote you look at, try to create a sentence that includes one of these points of information. If you want to further your research on these topics, have a look at the poet Beatrice Garland, World War II, so read up more information about the war and Japan's role in it, and read up on kamikaze pilots. Now that you know this, good luck.